I'm using Fusion to do this design. I made a base plate a couple weeks ago. That's the video you might have seen. This video has um, I'm using an 1.25 inch flat bar wrapped around this perforated plate, and it has a rib structure underneath here, and I'm going to use 1 inch square tubing with a notch cut out of it, and just kind of hooks around that rib. And I come down here to the footrest. This is 4 sheet metal parts that I've done, and I've created this such that it sits flat, but there's a bunch of compound angles here, which is a little bit complicated for me to figure out, but I got it. And then I'm going to use some swivel casters on the bottom. They're 1/4 20. And I'm going to weld a plate on the bottom and put a rib nut on there. So I generated a drawing of all the dimensions I wanted. This is a sheet metal part we're going to cut. We're going to cut on the laser and bend on our 25T there in the shop. But today's task was to see if I could fabricate this ring that's going to go around this base and get this joint up in here tight enough so that I can use the laser. I just want to make the greatest fit up I can do. So to start out with, I need to know how long of a piece of flat bar to cut. So I stuck a sketch on here. When I did this when I did this revolve in Fusion, I intentionally left this little gap here. This gap is 38 thou, and I generated a circle in the center of this. This is 1/8 inch flat bar. So I really want to know the length of this line. That is going to be the length of the piece of flat bar that I'm going to cut. So it is 37 1/3 inches long. We're going to cut it as close to that as I can get. And we're going to use a tube roller, not a tube roller, a bead roller, and to bend this flat bar. I'm taking off the dross off the back side of these plates that I cut a couple weeks ago. And I've already used the ring roller to roll my ring out of the flat bar. And I have 2 of these, and originally I was going to put a little lip on the seat. So I was going to use the other ring. I was going to use the other plate to offset the plate I'm welding to the ring. And after fooling with that for a little while, I realized that that was kind of a bad idea. I couldn't get the fit up to be quite right doing it this way. So I removed that spacer and just went back to having everything flat on the table. I'm using my old welding table for this, not my fixture table. This is really the first project I'm working on using a laser as a welder. And I didn't want to inadvertently weld something to my new fixture tables. Plus the Crossfire Pro is over on one side of the shop and the fixture table's on the other. So we don't have things quite organized yet. What I did was this what I've been doing here is just pulling the laser off the Crossfire Pro, and now I'm going to use it to weld that ring on. And what I did was I got a really good fit up to get the first piece of it tacked down. And I kind of got that straightened out. And you might have seen me put on a welding hood. The laser pretty bright, and it's a little hard to see what you're doing. The glasses are OD7, but it's still pretty bright. And then what I'm noticing on these is you'll see some smoke coming out when I first start the laser. So I went ahead and put my mask on, and I don't know what's causing that smoke. All my little test welds also did that, and I've cleaned off all the mill scale off of these parts, so I don't really quite know what that is, but the welds look great, and on a lot of these welds, I had problems with my wire getting stuck after I let go of the trigger on the laser. But you kind of see that this is kind of a tedious process. I have to make 5 more of these, but this is a learning process today. I'm printing up some jigs to make this a lot easier for the rest of them. But I worked on this maybe about an hour, and it worked out pretty well. I was able to get an excellent fit up all the way around the ring. And using a variety of clamps, I was able to force that flat bar ring to get back in there. And here I'm kind of aligning the ends up, and I was really quite impressed, so I had to take a photo of that. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the welds. Clean these up was just brush them off with a steel brush. And these welds are really tight, they're really small. And I went ahead and ran a bead up the center of the seam. You see the seam here is really quite small. I was impressed that I got such a great fit up. Flat bar, and you kind of see the heat zone on the flat bar, which shows that I got pretty good penetration. Basically, wherever there's a weld, you can see that I got really good penetration all the way through. I was running at 100 or 1000 watts with a wobble of 2 millimeters. And I'm running 045 wire. So all in all, it's really, really worked well this afternoon.